Hello and welcome back. In this session, we're going to talk about cloning again. Previous session on time-aware modeling, I spoke about cloning elements and I focused on requirements, and a few people have asked me questions and had issues with cloning other elements, such as class elements in their system architecture. So I'm going to focus on class elements in this case, and we're going to talk about shallow cloning versus deep cloning. We're going to talk about other things relevant to cloning in Sparx Enterprise Architect. So let's get started. So we're in a blank project here. We've got a diagram up for release 1. Let's add 3 class elements, right? 1, drag and drop, 2, and 3, right? Then let me draw on a connector from class 1 to class 2, and then a connector from class 2 to class 3. And then what I'm going to do, because I didn't mean to do this, is I'm going to get rid of this class 4. I don't want to overcomplicate the subject. We're just going to do something like that and bring in, this time, not an association class, just an association. All right. And then let's go to layout. Put these to the top, space them equally apart, and let's get started on cloning. So as you learned in a previous video, time-aware modeling part 3, and I'll put a link below in the description, we're going to right-click on this and we're going to clone structure as new version, right? And this is going to be for release 2, right? Now, we're not going to change the version number because our thinking may be, well, this is the first version of the release 2 architecture. Let's see what happens. So we're going to hit OK. It's going to ask us, where do you want to put it, right? Do not put it in the same folder. You certainly can, but I would not do this. You might end up with conflicts or problems. And it's certainly not the purpose of this. This is release 1. It's the previous project. Put it in the root node. So we're going to hit OK. And there we go. It is cloned release 2. Now the diagram still says release 1 because it is a copy, cloned everything, the diagram in here in the structure, and it kept the name. We're going to hit function key 2. Just rename this to release 2. All right. Let's go ahead and double click it and open it up. Here you can see the elements. There's no elements inside release 2's package or namespace. That's because these elements are in the release 1 namespace. So we have cloned the package, release 2, and we've cloned the diagram, right? It has a different global unique ID than the release 1 diagram. Again, we have namespace turned on. We can double click in here, go to diagram. You can turn namespace off and the namespace would go away, but it looks just the same as release 1. I would leave namespace on. This is a mistake that some modelers make. Turn off namespace when you're done so that you can understand what elements you're reusing. So what cloning elements means in Sparx Enterprise Architect is simply you're creating a copy, a duplicate for reuse of modeling elements, in this case, class elements. So we're in the release 2 namespace diagram and we have these elements. Let's right click on this and go to clone element as new version. It is disabled. Why is this? Now, a lot of modelers are running into this issue. Why this happens is that there's a conflict between the version numbers. So if I double click in here, remember we set it to version 01. Well, this actually is not version 01 of this cloned diagram. It is version 02 because the clone diagram, let me hit OK, we'll go over here and double click on this one, is 01. Now, if we go back to release 2 and we're in here, right click on it, clone elements as new version is enabled. So let's go ahead and clone this element right here, just this one. We're going to right click on it, clone element as new version, and it's at 0.1. We want to put it to 0.2. It should have incremented, but we've confused Sparx a little bit by having the diagram 0.1, and you're going to see what happens the next time we clone this. All right. So we're only working on this element right here, this class element, and these other ones we're just going to leave 1 and class 3 the same. Let's bring in class 2 from release 1 and see what happens, right? We have the connectors, they're here. So this is class 2, double click it, version 0.1, right? This is version 0.2 of the class elements. The global unique ID for these remain the same. That way we understand the associations that are relevant between the class elements. And when we cloned class 2, it brought over that connector global unique ID reference, and therefore we can see the same connectors from this class element to here and from class 3 to here. All right, so that is cloning class elements. Now let's go to release 2. We only have one element in here for release 2, and that's class 2, which was cloned from release 1. We're going to right click on this, clone structure as new version, and this time in this project, we're working on release 3 as we proceed. Notice the version is 0.1. We want to change this to 0.3, right? Let's leave it 0.2 and see. No, I don't want to do that because I want to show something else. 0.3, we're going to hit OK. We're going to put it at the root node. Do not embed it in release 2. Even though the team may be working on release 2 and you want to show, well, this architecture, eventually we're going to move to a release 3 project. So we're going to put it in this solutioning namespace. I would recommend not doing that. Just put it in its own parent folder, whether that's root folder or another folder. Let's go ahead and hit OK. And there we go. Now we have release 3. Let's go ahead and open it. Now notice that the class 2 from release 1 is in here. And now in release 3, we see the namespace is release 2 for this class element, class 2. Now I went ahead and took the 3 namespaces we created and I moved them to a package or namespace we call solutioning, right? And then what I want to do is I want to look at release 1. Everything appears to be working fine. Now, of course, I'm in release 1 and clone element as new is going to be disabled. If I right click on this, it's disabled, right? That's because we already cloned it, right? And Sparx knows this. So we're going to go to release 2. I right click on this. I can clone from here for release 2. I cannot clone. I'm in release 1 class 2. I can clone from here, which is interesting. I wouldn't do that because you've already created a clone. I want to keep the video short. I'll let you play around. If we clone this, there's going to be another copy of class 2 within the release 2 namespace, right? Let's go to release 3, right? I see release 1, class 1, release 2, class 2, release 1, class 3. And here I have a release 1, class 2, and I've hit Alt-G on it. It takes me to the release 1 namespace for class 2. But we're in release 3, and we want to right click on this and clone this element for release 3, right? It increments to release 3. Remember in the last one, it didn't because we didn't name originally did not name the diagram release 3. So it's playing off the version of the diagram as a first rule when it's creating a clone, all right? So I hope that makes sense. It's a mistake that some make, right? Now we're going to go ahead and clone element as new version, release 3. And there it goes. It is now here. If we hit Alt-G on this to find it in the browser, it is in the release 3 namespace. Now, if I go to the release 2 namespace for class 2, drag and drop this one in, you can see we have the same class element, class 2, relevant to the original current mode, release 1 of class 1 and class 3. Let's go ahead and remove these from our model. We're in release 3 right now. Let's hit save. Let's go ahead and close everything except release 3, so we're not confused about where we are. We can go ahead and close the folders, and we can see we're in release 3 over in the browser. All right, so also in release 3, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working on class 3. So we're going to go ahead and clone this one, all right? And version 03, that's where we're going to start. All right, and we've got the connector. We're all looking good here, and we're going to continue modeling from this point. You can see that we have, if we go to properties, we have release 3, class 2 is at version 03. If I go to class 3, it is at version 03. Now I want to make a point here about attributes and operations. So we're in release 1, and I've added an attribute and an operation to each one of the classes. Let's go look at release 2. You'll notice that the attributes and operations are carried over. And this is known as deep clone, right? Deep cloning versus shallow cloning, which is copies the element without the relationships, attributes, child elements, operations, and so on. So I wanted to make a point here. When you're starting out, you want to start with your architecture elements as they are for versioning, because this is version 01, this is 02, yet class 2, we did not clone the element, the attribute, and the operations, right? And then we go to release 3, we can see release 1 has attribute and operations, but these new versions do not. So for this next part, I went ahead and added in release 1 an attribute and an operation for each, right? So let's go to release 2. So when we're looking at release 2, the attributes and the operations were versioned. Release 2 is working, and they're modifying or refactoring class 2. So they've added an attribute and an operation, all right? Let's go to release 3. In release 3, we've cloned, and you can see we still have release 1. We have class 2. Well, what is this from? Hit Alt-G. It is from release 3 because we cloned it. If we go to release 2 and bring in class 2, drag and drop it in, we can see that it has associations between release 1 and class 1 and release 1 class 3, just as we had done before. Let's go ahead and bring in, let's see here, release 1 class 2. Should be the same with the connectors, and there we go, right? So you can see the modifications of attributes as they're taking place. So in release 3, we've added some more attributes and operations to class 2 and class 3. Let's go ahead and center everything. Right click here, and then align centers horizontally, and then make sure we save. And then we're going to close everything except release 3. All right, so there we are. All right, we're going to wrap up here. I hope this video has helped those that picked up from the time-aware modeling and the discussion around cloning, and helps you out. So when you're basically cloning, make sure that you're following the practices that I've set forth. I want to call them best practices, but you might have better practices. Just make sure that you're being consistent, right? So when to clone is for traceability, versioning, and iterative development across your modeling space. Best practices to maintain model integrity and consistency across your projects and your model elements, all right? We focused on class elements today. Hopefully, if you have a particular element where clone element as new is disabled, you understand how to resolve that. It could be you applied a duplicate version number, which is going to cause some confusion and conflicts within Sparx, and therefore it's just going to gray it out for you and not allow you to clone it because you already cloned it, right? And there's other things that you may run into. Let me know down in comments below if you've got any other questions and concerns. I appreciate the comments in the email. Sorry it took me a while to get back to it after we published Time-Aware Modeling 3. So here we go. All right. More on this as we proceed. We're going to be doing a lot of versioning in various scripts and various elements that we're getting into as we get into data warehousing and more on scripting. So until that next video, thanks again. Happy modeling.